A vibrator.
What's that gonna do?
No, I literally meant like a person.
Have come on this journey with me where I've realized I'm not very good at video games.
So now I gotta turn the seed into flesh, Jake. I turn the seed into flesh.
Look, we know Garfield didn't go to January 6th because he's lazy. But you know he was
And it was
there
a
in
Monday.
spirit.
Truck.
Is that enemy truck?
Yep.
That was delayed. Now leave it like that. That's good. That's good. That's good, Will.
I thought you were gonna say, and then I learned about Nazi Germany.
I think about the moment when you look into Sonic's eyes all the time. I think about Sonic's feet.
Okay, let's go. Wow. Oh!
He has a kid!
I'm on stream.
Maggie's watching Forrest Gump. Apparently she got to.
If you had asked me to guess what Maggie was talking about when she came in, I would not have guessed Forrest Gump.
Look, I hate Twilight Princess. I've never played it. I don't want to because I hate that art style.
Man, that is the most Ian Gibson sentence I've heard in my entire fucking life.
It's a
No! I don't think you can say that!
I can literally hear it behind me.
Oh, it's Roxas. Show me Primus. Show me some Primus. Primus, baby. Look, I want to be a little slutty so that people will want to be friends with me.
Yes!
Yes. Woo! Wow.
One. We did it!
Hey,
Hey, the
5
timer started over! Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. It is Local Chat, episode 111. That's right, folks, 111 times I've been here questioning why I'm doing this. Joining me this week is the wonderful and beautiful Kyle Bailey. And also joining us, extremely special guests, Bill and Amanda Gardner of Deep End Games.
Hey!
Hey,
How's it going in the basement?
basement tea. I've been living down here for the better part of 3 years. But take a second back. Hold it. Take a step back. Kyle is beautiful. You're
That's
beautiful.
true.
Not as beautiful as my cat. Not as beautiful as my cat.
Oh,
Bring the cat back.
what a majestic beast.
His name is Mochi. He's been on the podcast many times. People are probably
Yes.
tired of him, but
We have, we have a
he's
lot
looking
of,
out the window, so.
we have a lot of guests with cats that are.
Do we?
Oh, Jake has a dog, but then
Yeah.
Ian has two cats. David's cat Raz from Psychonauts was on last week.
Oh wow.
I feel like everyone.
We can bring in our children if
Yeah,
you'd like.
you don't want that. No, they're gonna be.
Give us.
Actually, that's the reason we don't have. Oh,
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 that's the reason we don't have pets. There's all kinds of allergies.
yeah, yeah.
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 Dogs,
Yeah,
cats, nuts. You know, you name it.
Nuts.
I have a tiny
We have no
apartment.
pet
so-
nuts. Not
Oh,
one.
no.
No pet nuts.
We have kept Mr. Peanut
Is
out
it
of the house.
dogs?
Is that the new pet rock? Like, it's for a new, for a new generation.
Yeah, you want it's a new therapy to get kids past their
Gotcha.
allergies. You have them walk the nuts.
Walk the nuts. I
Like
think that's
toasted,
something-
like lightly toasted. Yeah.
Sorry,
Wow, we
I'm
got a
just
show,
gonna
huh?
bounce out. Right
Son, why don't you go
now.
walk the nuts for a little bit? We'll talk about this later.
This
Um,
this is a record for me. I've never derailed. This
Yeah,
quickly.
wow. Like it
This is
usually
great.
takes
I mean,
me
like
15 minutes.
like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
He was
usually
ready.
don't,
He
yeah.
was like, it's gonna have
I
to-
I don't
Super
plan
buddy.
anything out, and then nothing works. So maybe I should start planning things out, and then things
I don't
go a
know.
little bit better. You guys, I know Kyle has known you guys for a while. We met briefly because we worked for Gamehumanary
Yep.
briefly when they did some of the Bioshock stuff with you, Bill, and then was it Gamehumanary that did the Perception doc?
Yep.
Yeah.
We actually did them at the same time. I think I
Was it
still
at the
have the
same-
footage.
Oh,
Yeah, because we were
yeah.
like, we wanted something ancillary that was like, oh, we can get like a 45-minute thing. So we just sat Bill down and made him talk to us for like an hour and a half about
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
opening
I
level of Bioshock.
Tortured you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it was great. It was a great series. I really love that. And,
It was fun.
Yeah, if I still have obviously I have the Blu-rays.
Oh, you do, because I made sure that everyone got them because I was
No,
in charge
thank
of
you.
awards.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
It was a good
that
time. It was a real
That
good
was a
time.
nightmare. Now, if anyone's watching hasn't played Perception, please play Perception. It was your guys' first game as an indie studio, right? Correct?
Yeah, we flexing some muscle there. We were doing some really trying to get a little bit into sort of my what do you say, ancient family history, like some of my
Your ancestry.
ancestral history, I guess. But trying out new things. Like it was like I was psyched to explore ideas like spatial intelligence and really like putting the player in a different pair of shoes and experience the in this case the world through a blind woman's eyes. And so that was really exciting for us. I think one of the things we always try and do is take things that you're familiar with and then add in elements that at first people are like, wait, how's that even going to work? And Romancelvania, for example, that's exactly it. It's like you want to talk about it, or like basically we say it's the imagine if Dracula was the star of The Bachelor, and people are like, what? And then they clicks and they're like, oh, that's awesome. And then you're like, yeah. And so now imagine if he's playing like a Castlevania like game, and he's going out and meeting all these different monsters to get them to come on the show and try and wine and dine them. And so again, I love that sort of weird feeling that people get. We're like, wait. And then when they're bought in, like, oh, you see the light go on. And to me, I think about my experiences, my sort of formative gaming experiences, and it just like going into Electronics Boutique or whatever and looking at the boxes and pulling out one. I was like, what is this all about? And you look at it and you get that same sort of journey where it's not immediately like, oh, it's a shooter and things go boom, and hey, that's great. I love games that you shoot things and things go boom. Yeah. But again, you look at like even like BioShock. That's like trying to pitch that. We had the hardest time for the longest. I was like, we had to do that demo at E3 to explain it. Be like, okay, here's a little sister. Oh, here's a little girl. What is she doing? There's a corpse. She's collecting something from it. What's going on? And what's that? Thump. It's a big daddy. And sort of walk people into it because it's so freaking weird. And the past 3 years, that's what we've been doing, is trying to figure out how to message Romancelvania. But that was a bit of a tangent. I just love taking people on journeys.
No, that was
walk.
Taking the for a walk. Yeah.
exactly what we're looking for. Well, if you don't mind, I'm just going to start running through these questions.
No, you go for it.
Do it.
I'm taking the nuts for a walk. So
Please, I'll shut up.
So actually, speaking about Romancelvania, the Subpixel guys, we got together and we were trying to figure out some smart questions to ask you guys. But
I like stupid questions too, though.
I mean, we've got some dumb questions.
Good.
we got
don't
dumb
forget
questions.
who we are.
It was ChatGPT who came up with the good questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're all AI. So just feed us answers like a robot. Okay, so our first question is actually how many ideas did you guys run through before landing on Romancelvania, and
It
how
landed on us.
Yeah.
Well, so for a while, like after Perception, we're experimenting with VR or with Perception. I love VR. There's some really cool stuff there, but just sort of wasn't the time for us. Wasn't the right sort of thing. We were messing with the dark web. That was a sort of thing we were playing around with for a while. And actually, Kyle was helping out with that for a little while.
I made a very bad, stupid horror thing that I was like, maybe they can use my video in the thing.
I thought it was really cool, and it was like, things were moving there, but at the same time, this was around, I think, around the time when you want to talk about, sort of the yearly.
Yeah. So Romancelvania absolutely happened by accident. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I was like, oh, no.
No,
Like,
no.
this wasn't like us ideating on like what game should we make. This was an accident, and it was the best accident ever. So Bill and I have been together for almost 23 years now. And one of the things we like to do is at Halloween time, we play Symphony of the Night. It's a ritual, one would say, in Castlevania terms. So we're playing, and Bill makes a little quip. Like we're down in some kind of basement, and there's a little Salem witch, and Bill kind of said, what are Salem witches doing in Dracula's house? Like, do you have a party? And we just kind of like laughed and was like, yeah, what are all those monsters doing there anyway? And he's like, oh yeah, like maybe there's a party, like maybe they're dating them. And then he goes, wait. Dramatic pause. And he said, Romancelvania. And my jaw just hit the floor. Yeah. And I just looked at him like it was magic. And I was like, gimme, like, take my money and anything. Like, what is this? I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah. And so it's rare in development when you sometimes you kind of go where the response is, and when the wind blows you. You have all these ideas. We have a giant list of games that we hope to work on one day. And we were working on dark web, and it was we had a lot of work to do, and we were pitching it around and not quite getting the bites that we want, and we're loving it. But when this hit, we're immediately like, oh my god, no, this is like, I remember having this conversation. We're like, we've already spent all this time in this thing, and time is money, and we've got built all the stuff we've already built, and it's like, and it's really cool, but like, and then I said, well, true, but which would you rather work on? Like, if you're going to spend it was like, she's like, Romancelvania, like, without a doubt.
Without question. And another funny bit here is we would mention that word, just the word, no pitch, no nothing, to our dev friends. And we'd be like, hey, so what if I said this word to you? Romancelvania. And they would be like, how do I get in on this? Like it was a secret club, like that they wanted to get in on. And so we were able to build this phenomenal team just from this word. Yeah. And then we decided what it meant, right? Like, then we came up with the story, and then we sort of put it all together. But for us, Romancelvania was a feeling. It was like oh no, yeah, like, I get it. It was a visceral, full body hell yes, I say. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. We're very busy people. We've got 4 kids, busy life, and many decisions we have to make about our bandwidth and our time and the way we spend it is if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. So yeah.
I'm so sorry. I don't normally suck on my own fingers.
I'm like, what is happening here?
But there was a little crumb or something here, and I kind of nudged it, and my hand is now bleeding.
That's
it was
weird.
It was glass.
So, wow. Okay.
We were having celebratory champagnes the other day. And
champagnes.
Plural.
Well,
things were going awesome. We got some good news. It's like, oh, it was approved on this platform. So like, yeah, it's a journey making games, right? It's always, uphill battles. But we got the approval, and so Lindsay, my sister, who is the producer in the game, she does a million things. She's like, ready to drink the champagne. So she comes down with a couple glasses, or it was you, I think.
It was me.
I'm sorry, yeah. So we're drinking champagne, and then I got like someone, a coworker, was like, oh, I got some bad news. So get on the phone, and like, as they're explaining some pretty bad news, we got over it, we fixed it, whatever. I'm like, I pick up the phone or the connector or whatever, and I immediately drop the champagne glass, and it shatters. Spilled champagne all over my computer, and I'm sitting there while, like, literally, it was it was a great metaphor. I had broken the champagne glass and it spilled everywhere. Bloody, I'm not gonna show you. Bloody finger. Sorry, tangent.
I mean, have we ever drawn blood on this podcast before? This might be a first.
First blood,
yeah.
Romancelvania.
I mean, we killed that guy, but there was no blood.
I mean, but that was off screen, and you couldn't see that. It was fine.
Tidy.
We have literally bled for this game. I mean, and we can say that now. So
Yeah, okay,
We got it
good.
on
We've had the
camera. I mean,
tears.
we're
We've
proof.
had tears.
Yeah,
We've had
lots of
sweat,
sweat. Yeah,
blood, sweat, champagne.
yeah. No,
Cheers.
it has been an amazing development. We've had such a freaking blast on this thing, and I'm so lucky to be able to work on it. But it's been a lot of work. I've never put in more into a project than this, and I've crunched on projects, and again, nobody on the team crunches. It's just sort of internally us. You know, my sister,
Totally.
Brendan, one of our programmer who like is so dedicated. Brendan Coffin. He's our
Amazing.
basically handles all of our code.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
He's a genius.
And so he busts his butt too. But for the most part, we just put a lot into this thing because we're just so proud of it. But yeah, it's been wild. It's been a wild ride.
I'm very excited for it.
Yes.
Because I remember going to PAX. What year was it that you guys were there with Deep Web?
Yeah, I know that was so let's see.
3 or
It's
4.
probably
4 years
2018?
ago.
probably
because
2019.
2019? Yeah.
2019. It might have been 18, but it's something around. So that was shortly after that. Was around the time when the sort of idea. Well, probably actually was Lennon shortly. Anyway, so we had showed that off, and we were all like plugging away at it, and then the idea for this hit, and you know, just sort of this pull. We're like, we
Stop.
gotta
Yeah.
do this thing, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, no, because I remember that, and then I want to say it might have been you, Kyle, who put the Kickstarter. Because I don't know if I was still following or exactly how, because my memory's terrible. But I remember seeing the Kickstarter, and we were all like, "Oh, this is what they're doing next."
Yeah.
And I remember being like, "Oh, I just seen the link, and I was like, oh, they're working on the dark web thing. I was like, that's gonna be neat." And I assumed it was just the same thing, and I remember clicking into it and being like, "This is awesome."
Yeah.
And just being like, Romancelvania, like you were saying, Amanda, it's just a great word.
It
And
is.
it's
Flows off the
so
tongue.
weird. It hasn't been put together before. It's just
Well,
like,
it's also
Yeah.
weird, and you know, they're like, I've had a lot of panics throughout development. You work on something long enough, and like occasionally you'd get like an invoice from someone who's working on the team, and it would be spelled wrong, and I'm like, oh my god, what am I doing? Nobody understands what this is. This is so stupid. What am I doing? You take a chance, and sometimes it's not always going to land. But I think generally speaking, is we've got it out there, people get it, and like, yeah, if you spell it wrong, so what? If you say it wrong, so what? I think generally speaking, most people get it. And when it hits, I think what we're most interested in, because there are so many puns, there's so many weird bosses and just weird stuff and funny stuff and obscure references, and it's just like, it's so much fun. We allowed ourselves to say, it's fine, not everyone has to get it. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're not making the most accessible thing in the world. We're not making a giant AAA project where it's like,
Right.
if one thing doesn't go right, we lose $20 million. That's not it. Like, we're trying to put ourselves out there and just let our hair down and do something that's wild and different.
Yeah.
And just allow ourselves that sort of freedom to just create, just like sort of just very,
And let it hang out there.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. Like, when I was writing this script, I was very unfiltered, and it was very freeing to just be as weird as possible, and just kind of, if the jokes land, then great, they made the game, and if they
Yeah.
didn't, that's fine. I was experimenting and playing, and it's very playful and freeing, I would say, to make this
I
game.
actually had a question about that specifically, Amanda. I think around the time we were doing the perception doc, we had some questions about the writing process that you guys have. Obviously, I'm sure it's very collaborative, but I think I'm pretty sure it was you who mentioned like fan fiction and just
Yeah.
I'm a big I love reading, and I've written some horrible fan fiction back in my high school days. You'll never find it, don't worry. Don't even try. But that sort of seems so central to a lot of the creativity that's behind this game, of just sort of having that freedom to go, what if these characters got together? So like, did that help inspire you? Did your love of fan fiction come into play when you were writing the script at all?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where I cut my teeth, as a romance writer, was in fan fiction. And the idea that you can take a character and then make them do what you want. It's very powerful, And so, we started with Dracula. Everybody knows Dracula, but this is not this is not your mama's Dracula, This is a very different Dracula, unless your mom is me, and then it is your mom's Dracula. But for my children, they could say yes.
The one
Um,
exception, but
but yeah, but then you could sort of like take some monsters that we know, like Medusa and whatnot, and then you can take some monsters that are tropes, like the werewolf, and subvert them and make them interesting. And so, yeah, I think you start from a place of familiarity, and then you just get wacky with it, and it really paid off. Like there's that phrase: "Write drunk, edit sober."
that's so
I
good.
wrote this game
I love that.
plastered. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I
We'll
don't know.
probably
If
play it a little plastered too. So
yeah,
Good.
the editing part. I don't know how sober.
I think
we were for
edit right drunk, edit high. Like like it's a
Yeah.
wacky game. You fight an octopus with guns called the Gloctopus. I mean,
Yeah.
like what
Yep.
else?
I mean, but
do I have to
that's
say?
so normal. Like everyone does
Yeah.
that, you know?
So,
No, the word that we've
so
kind of embraced. I
basic.
shouldn't say this again. A lot of this is non-traditional. Like I've been down the like perfectly crafted everything, and like I said, it's like it's gotta get it. It's gotta be big, and it's gotta like I've been down the road. That's fine. That will always exist. But we joke. We every day is just a joy to work on
Yeah.
this thing, and we joke. It's like that's so stupid. It's in the game.
Yes.
Like,
I love it. It's so
it's so dumb. Like, and we say that all the time. We there's a reason that there are filters for these things, and it's because you're going to put it in front of someone who's going to rig or model something or rig it and then animate it and then put it in and then you balance it and you tune it and all this kind of, and at some point usually you met with like wait, this doesn't make any sense. And we're working with a crew where people get that this is supposed to be kind of dumb and it's silly and like
this goldfish has very sexy legs and is doing the can. It's the can tuna. Like
yeah
that's just what it is. What it is.
because like again, games. I love the games can be anything. I love that we have. I was talking about VR before, talking about like there's so many different avenues to go down, and that's awesome. And I feel like as much as we've been pushing out in all these different directions, especially on the indie space, you see all these really exciting ideas. I feel like it's starting to retract a bunch now, and I feel like it's starting to come back into this like centered whole. And it's kind of disappointing to me. I mean, there's still a lot of risk-taking games and pioneering games and that kind of thing, but I do feel like recently they've been pretty serious. I think media in general has been really serious. Like things have gotten really, frankly, dark and like kind of a downer. And that's honestly one of the thing that gave us the courage to say it doesn't matter. We worked on this other game for a few years, and we have this other thing. And you know what? Let's not continue to perpetuate the sort of darkness that you see in media and this sort of cynicism.
Yeah.
And we just want to be like, you know what? That's not who we are right now. And that's not what we want to put out there. We want to put something out there that's full of joy, that's optimistic and stupid and fun, like
Right.
Should really stop.
It's feel good, right?
Yeah.
Like Bill and I were consuming so much like horror and like brainstorming, because for Dark Web we had, it wasn't just one plot, it was like come up with as many horror stories as you could, and like at the end of the night we would just put on like, I don't know, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, because we were like, we need to laugh.
Yeah.
We're so
I've
bummed
got
out.
my Philly representation here.
It
So.
wasn't good for us.
Yeah, at some point, like horror is dark, but at some point horror went from being like a really dark story where you come away from it, this sort of the usual kind of arc where it's like, oh, I learned something and that's really dark and we fixed that problem or whatever. Now it's just like, oh yeah, no, that's terrible. Things are still terrible, and nothing you do about that. It's whatever. It's just as bad as when you started. Like we mentioned, well, I don't like to shoot down other things. I appreciate that there's this type of media out there. It's just not for me, is what I'm saying. I want to
Sure.
put that.
I think that's why games like I just beat Hi-Fi Rush, which was
Cool.
literally like a breath of fresh air.
Love it.
Nice.
After a lot of the games that I played in 2022 to start off 2023 with like a really poppy, colorful, saturated, loud kind of music-driven rhythm combat game was like wild. It was crazy. And it's funny you guys talk about like it feels like stuff is sort of kind of more dour and dark. And I just think back to, I'm a big film guy, as you guys know, and I just think back to like the 1970s when there were a lot of directors. You had Scorsese doing like Mean Streets and all these sort of dark, depressing, like this is real life. And then Star Wars came along.
Yep.
and like change the paradigm.
Yep.
So maybe
This is
your game is Star Wars.
this
you
is something
know?
we're very honest. We've had this exact conversation, and I love like 70s film. You know, you Chinatown and all
Oh, so
like
good.
Yeah.
love all that stuff.
But bleak.
Yeah, exactly.
Bleak.
And that things are cyclical. I think we're due for that. I think we're due for some interesting turns there, and I think you saw it. You know, the '90s I think was also a heavily underrated period for film. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think they were relatively dark. You get the Fight Clubs, you get the Sevens, you got just like I think everything from like Three Kings to I'm just spitballing here. It was a relatively dark period, right? And then you had Lord of the Rings, which was another Star Wars. Essentially, it's just like good is good and bad is bad, and it's just like this uplifting tale of heroism
And second breakfast.
and second breakfast. Yeah, and yeah, and then something went horribly wrong 15 years later, and film has just been what the hell's going on.
Well, and now WB's like, hey, we're gonna make Lord of the Rings again. Maybe if Peter Jackson's interested, we can
Milk him.
What is that supposed? Is that supposed to be a sequel or a prequel or what are they?
It said it's not going to retread the Peter Jackson movies, but how can you make Lord of the Rings
I
without
think they're
retreading-
using it as the brand term.
Mhm.
Because
Okay,
that's
like the
what,
Rings of
it's
Power
what they
was.
own. Yeah. Rings of
Yeah,
Power. Oh, don't bring up
we'll see how
Rings
it
of
goes.
Power.
Like I actually quite enjoyed the show. I know it's like
Unexpectedly.
yeah. I went in being like, what the hell? Like
Yeah.
like was like I honestly thought to me. I mean, I don't remember that. I feel terrible. I'm terrible with names in general.
Halberd.
So the elf and the dwarf.
Oh my
Elrond
god.
and Durin.
Elrond. Yeah.
Yeah, those Elrond, of course, yeah. Duh. Their relationship was just so
Those
Best
were like
part
the
of the
best
show.
scenes. I was
Yeah.
gonna say
Best part of
them
the show.
and
Give me a
those,
buddy cop movie with those two, and
Yeah.
and
and Durin's was it Disa, his wife, was
Yeah.
like
Oh,
amazing.
she was
like
great.
and she was so funny,
Yeah.
and there were parts of that show that I really like. The music is
Yep.
phenomenal. It's
Yep.
phenomenally good.
Yep,
Other
yep.
parts I was like, I could have done without
Sure.
this, but
Sure.
I was
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. But it's weird because it's such a rich should be able to explore it. And it's funny because this is the same sort of tension that we had internally with the idea of like taking on a sequel to Bioshock. Like initially after we finished Bioshock, it was, what's next? And we're like, we had all these ideas and we went off on a bunch of different projects and that kind of thing. But you know, the publisher, rightfully so, wanted a sequel, but it was like, we can't. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, how do you follow that up? We got a time, you get a ton of money, and like you got to go. We kind of subscribe to the theory of the sort of James Cameron sequel theory, which is just that you can successful sequels will either double down on an idea or subvert an idea for a sequel, and the best sequels tend to be the ones that do both. You look at James Cameron, right? Aliens and Terminator 2 did both of those things, doubled down and subverted, right? The whole "come with me if you want to live." That's brilliant, right? I mean, it's like we take it for granted now, but at the time, it's like, well, it's revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
You take the bad guy, make him the good guy, and
And then add a T-1000.
yeah, exactly. You're doubling down, exactly. Make an unstoppable killing machine even more unstoppable, right? But so anyway, I feel bad for. I mean, Bioshock 2 is great, and people love it now. And like I think when it came out, it was kind of like I remember seeing a lot of the reception, and a lot of people were like, "Ooh, why do I want to go back to Rapture?" Like all this like toxic comments being like, "Oh yeah, that world that you loved and you said was like the best in gaming. You don't want to go back there." Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sure. Friends like these, right? No, I get it. Like sometimes meanwhile, we were going back to World War II for the fourth time in Call of Duty, and it's like, okay, guys.
I don't want to go back to Germany.
Yeah,
This time the
yeah,
Nazis are the good guys. Like
yeah, there you go.
subvert.
It's subverting. Yeah, there you go. Oh, jeez.
No, yeah,
Um,
ooh, yeah, you don't want to subvert. No.
Yeah, so
Oh, God.
it's funny how we react that way to sequels and whatnot. Like something becomes
Well,
beloved,
people get precious. Yeah.
beloved, and you don't want it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
You know, that's tricky. That's why creating things is tough.
Well, it's the same thing when you're like, just a recent example, people watching like The Last of Us, and it's like, oh, for at least the games, people are like, oh, make a Last of Us 2, I want more Joel and Ellie.
Mhm.
And they didn't do more Joel and Ellie because you would have gotten sick of just more Joel and Ellie. Like, traveling across the country. It was a good first game, and people want more of it, but holding it back isn't giving people more of it isn't what they actually want. And so
Yeah.
when the second game came out, people were mad, but it's also a great game because it didn't just retread the same thing.
Well, the same but different. That's what you always talk
Yeah,
about.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
didn't play two. You see, likes two. I didn't play it yet.
I didn't
that's sorry.
finish 2 mostly because it was extremely sad. And I think I moved.
Was it dour?
I have
It's a
yeah,
good
I've
dour.
It's
I do
definitely
have
the
to
word of the
replay it.
podcast.
I just replayed the first game because I had to record it for work, and I've been watching the show. So it's just
Mhm.
like I need happiness in my life that isn't The Last of Us
Yeah.
over and
Yeah.
over again. But yeah, it's just wild that people think it's just like give me more of this, give me more of this. You give them more of it, and they're like, I don't want this. This is gross. I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
"But
tricky.
you wanted more of it.
It's tricky. It's not just
Right,
about.
you said you wanted it.
You literally ordered it."
Well, I also think that like Marvel does that constantly, where it's like we're just gonna pump out a lot of the same stuff, and it's
Sure.
like they've been successful for a long time, but I do get the feeling that that sort of endless pile of love is kind of dying down a little bit for them.
Yeah, well,
And
also the quality has dropped off too, though.
well,
right?
that's true. If you could consistently make stuff that was similar but written well enough, I think that's a different story. But I do think that
Yeah.
their quality
I
has
know.
dropped off.
I did just kind of disparage like the after Lord of the Rings, that sort of time period. But I do like. I want to be clear that what Marvel pulled off was just
Oh, it's insane.
unbelievable. Seriously, up until Infinity War, even beyond Infinity War, like WandaVision is one of our favorite shows.
I love
It's
WandaVision.
amazing, but
Right? Yeah.
that threshold for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, to be, I mean, how many movies was that up until Infinity War?
Oh, God.
Or,
Like 20s?
20
Yeah.
Yeah.
somewhere around
And
there.
It is
there
an
are no-
incredible arc from Iron Man to Endgame.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
there's no
very well
bad
done.
movies, and overwhelmingly, they're just like, what a feat! Like,
Yeah,
we'll
there's
never
like some
experience it
okay
again.
movies, but there's
Yeah.
no like stinkers really.
It was like Thor: The Dark World. The worst thing you could say about it was
Yeah.
yeah.
I actually never. That's
That's the one
there
you
were
didn't
two of them
watch
I
yet.
didn't see, and that's one of them I didn't see. Yeah, but I mean, just the amount. I don't just strictly from a production standpoint, and trying to coordinate across all of
Can't
those
imagine.
films, that like how things are going to. And I think that's honestly the biggest problem here, is that I think that they're like, hey, we did. Oh my god, we pulled this thing off. Thanos. We introduced him in the first movie, and we teased him, and all this stuff, and everything connected, and introduced this character, and this character, and blah 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 blah, and this whole saga. And then they're like, oh, we got to do that again. Oh shit.
shit.
Oh, and so you know,
Scramble.
the
Yeah.
quantum has been the thread, and Kang has been kind of set up or whatever. And now they're trying to play him up much more. But it's like without that sort of thread to pull you through the whole experience, it's kind of felt random, you know.
I know.
Yeah, and I feel like comic books back when they did it had the chance to be like, hey, we can plan ahead, we can have other writers work on things and all that sort of stuff and
Mhm.
thread it back into it. But with this, they were like very precious and they didn't start working on it until the
Yeah.
previous one ended. So it's just like,
right.
hey, let's make these movies like comic books, but then you're just burning out. It's not new artists working on it, it's all the same artists working on all the same things. So you get the CGI problems and all that
Yep.
sort of stuff. So it's
The
just like,
most damning thing that I heard, and this may have been a rumor, so grain of salt here. And I like the Doctor Strange movie, the most recent. There was some good stuff there. I felt very held back and restrained, but I think the most damning thing that I heard, grain of salt, was that Raimi hadn't seen WandaVision until either late in production or something like.
They got the cliff notes is apparently what
yeah, and
happened.
that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like, that's like there's.
But it explains why she sucked in the movie.
I don't know.
Like,
Yeah.
That was the like. Listen, you can be inconsistent again. The achievements of coordinating everything they did in the first whatever, however many three sagas or whatever, unbelievable. But I mean, what the journey that Wanda was on in that was like a great way to set it up. It was so creative, so fresh. Never seen anything like it. Phenomenal stuff. And that pain when she turns
Oh.
into like of
I
losing
haven't
her, I felt it.
cried.
And then like
that?
within like 2 minutes, that was like that felt like okay,
Cheap, yeah. No
yeah,
yeah.
they done her dirty.
Yep.
It
It was
I mean,
Yeah.
lack of coordination, I feel like, and planning is no more evident than in the recent Star Wars trilogy, where it's just like, hey,
Yeah.
Star Wars is big. It can't fail. What if we didn't plan anything and we just let people do stuff?
For
And
Bill's
then tried
sake,
to take it back.
we're just gonna change the
One of the
subject.
best
I don't want to see him go nuclear.
one of the best summaries I heard of the new sequel. And there's some good stuff there. And I episode 7 seemed like it was really like, okay, there's some issues here, and it's kind of the same but different, but mostly the same. Was that I can't remember who it was, but somebody said on YouTube that every one of the movies in the new trilogy worked so desperately to try and fix the issues with the movie that came before.
Yeah.
And so episode 7 was like all of the CG and all that bullshit and all like that's gone. We're going back to the original Star Wars. We're gonna fix that. And then episode 8 was like, yeah, that episode 7, which is all the same stuff. Nope, none of that matters. It's gone. We're gonna fix that. And then episode 9 was like, hey, they subverted everything. Nope, we're gonna fix that. It's all like that. Like it was just constant like resetting, trying to fix it. Yeah, I'm gonna.
It's just like I wouldn't call the latest Marvel stuff as bad and not mismanaged because we don't know the whole story, but like it's not quite to that depth, but it's getting there, and I feel like they can save it and try to work things out. But
I do think
not putting a movie out every 6 months.
Well, and I think that's why they're leaning more into the shows like Andor. I don't know if you guys watch Andor.
Oh.
I loved Andor, and
Shut
it was like a jolt to watch something. It was like, oh, Star Wars doesn't have to just be what the movies are. This is complex. It's dark. It's brooding, but it's also really smart. It's paced really. I love the pace. I love the slower paced stuff.
Perfect. And
Yes.
it was
And
perfect.
yeah,
So we get enough stuff that's next. We get enough of that. Like
yeah.
Nothing peeves me more than when people are like, "Oh, it's too slow." It's like, listen, you got plenty of other stuff. Go enjoy the million other things. Let me have this one thing. Like, let me have the one slow burn thing that's out there. You know, you go, whatever. Go on YouTube. Just go TikTok. Whatever. Just like, let me enjoy this. Like
Consume.
Andor, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Yes. And that I think what's great about not only the slow burn, but Andor, it's worth the slow burn because every single goddamn shot in that show is so rich and textured and thought about. The production design on that is, I think, the best thing on television, probably even movies. Like it puts, honestly, to me, it was like, oh yeah, hey, you can take Star Wars and you can take it in all these directions. You can make it lived in. You can make it all. We alluded to in the original trilogy, right, where it's like a lived-in world and there's so much to sink your teeth into. And I used to have like an encyclopedia of all the stupid BS and all the guns and vehicles and all this kind of stuff. And you're interested in that, right? In the sequels, it's like I don't give a shit about any of this. It's like none of it mattered. You know, it was all just like whatever. It's all just silly puppets for the sake of like, hey, that's what Star Wars has. The kids like puppets, right? Let's add more puppets. And
More puppets, more droids.
yeah, but Andor is just like, again, there's that one scene where they show the gloves in the I think it's the first episode, the wall of gloves. And
for the miners and
I want to
stuff.
stare at each of these gloves for a good 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You know,
they brought in graffiti artists, I think it was, like actual real life graffiti artists to do Star Wars graffiti of the sets that is not even in like most of the shots. Like they just did it because they're like, hey, we want to make this seem as legit as possible. Go crazy. And the care that obviously the production team put into that show is wild.
Yeah. I mean, it's like great. Down to like when I'm watching the new films, I'm always like, oh my God, put aside going back to Tatooine, you're going to build another goddamn sand planet. Like, imagine being like, hey, there's a universe. The world can be anything. We're going to do it. Sand.
Right, we'll do like the same
like
3
not
biomes.
even like blue sand, not even like maybe pretty purple sand.
In Andor, there was plenty. Like when they talk about when someone dies, they become a brick to put in that wall. That makes you play. Like
you're creating a culture.
Yeah,
like
right?
yeah.
And let's talk about culture. Let's talk about Mon Mothma's clothing and her home and everything about her being the most elegant and interesting. And oh my God, I've never seen anything like it. Cultural icon. Mon Mothma.
The most boring character in the original trilogy is like the most fascinating character we've seen in Star Wars in 20 years.
Yeah.
You're doing something
got
right.
the same actress to play her that played her in
the prequels. Yeah.
Revenge of the Sith or whatever.
Yeah, there were deleted scenes in Revenge
Yes.
of the Sith.
And she's great. She was in
Yeah.
Rogue One. She's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Just elegant. And,
I did not think we would be talking this deeply about Star Wars, and it warms my heart. I know one of our viewers. Do you want to read off some of the comments?
I was just gonna say, Halucha, our most famous of viewers, our
Saint
one
Halucha.
viewer,
Yeah.
Saint Halucha, popped in to say that us talking about the MCU and Star Wars is Ian's nightmare, who is staunchly against. I don't think he has hard opinions on things, so we tend to not talk about things because.
So I always say this, like, if anyone wants to direct me and tell me to shut the hell up, I'm happy to.
I can only jab him so many times.
Were you jabbing me? I'm sorry. I'll go.
No, I was just gonna say
anyway,
the Romancelvania. My last thing on Star Wars, we can move back, was just the thing I love about Star Wars is how advanced yet held back it is.
Yep.
Where it's like the future, and I know a million people said this, but it's the future. But it's like they don't have like technology and like Star Trek and stuff. They're still like poor people.
It's like old
and rich
future.
people. Yeah, it's like fantasy future, and it just like I think Andor, especially with the bell tower guy, like drumming things. Like there's machines that could do that. We have alarm clocks today, but they do that because it's like it's what Star Wars is, and it's just like cool to see, you know.
What's funny is when you say that about the difference between Star Trek. Like the other night, I told my 14-year-old, we were talking about something, and I was like, "Oh my god, in Star Trek they have something called a replicator, and you can like just get anything out of it." And Picard would say tea, Earl Grey hot, and he would just have his tea. And Liam goes, "That's so dumb.
Yeah,
you could just have anything." And I was like,
No, I
like if I want tea Earl Grey hot, like
No, I get fulfillment's great. But from a story perspective, like I think speaking of the shift from the 90s to the 2000s, cell phones have wrecked story.
Yeah,
absolutely killed story, and I think that's where Star Trek versus Star Wars, or more recent Star Wars, is like they kind of got really good with the tech. And what was really great about, I mean, Han Solo hitting the Millennium Falcon and hearing it sputter back up, that's the world I want. I want an imperfect sci-fi world, a lived-in sci-fi world. That's what made Star Wars great. Was the fact that like, oh, it's limitless technology, but it's limited by the sort of form factor, limited by the use, limited by the fact that it's lived in and that kind of thing, and that it's created by actual beings that are imperfect. That's what I love about that world. I mean, like the sleekness of Star Trek, I get it's aspirational, but once you have that, once you attain that, it's the same thing like when people become rich and famous and this kind of, they become incredibly boring, right? Because they have what they need, and they're not shooting for anything right now. So that's why you look at musicians, right? They become successful and they get fat and happy, right?
I mean, it's no wonder why everyone signs up for Starfleet, because they're probably bored out of their minds on Earth, and they're like, send me out to a planet, let me be a colonist, let me fight Klingons, because I'm sitting at home in my pleasure booth isn't doing anything for me. Like I need to feel sweat.
You're already putting in a story that's way more interesting.
Yeah,
I love the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek film.
I was just thinking about that first scene.
Yeah,
because it melds both worlds. You can have it still be a little cerebral, but then you have the physical action and danger. And I grew up on both Star Wars and Star Trek, so Next Generation was like what I watched when I wasn't watching Star Wars. And I love that Star Trek is more. It is a little bit more cerebral. It's more focused on moral issues and less on physicalized danger. There are those episodes that do have that, but I think the moral quandaries that the place Star Trek characters find themselves in, they're allowed to sort of expand upon ideas that Star Wars doesn't get to tackle that often. So I think that's the difference between the two. But I mean, if you want sort of classic blockbuster fun, you can't beat Star Wars. I mean, it's great. Yeah, so
that's a great way of putting it, honestly. Yeah, and I realize how dismissive it is. That world, but I think the moral quandary, and I'm my Star Trek exposure is relatively linear or limited. But but I think that's a very compelling case the bits that I've seen. Yeah, I mean, having Picard get into these sort of duel of wits, that shit is hot.
Yeah, it's like
Yes.
Star Trek is chess and Star Wars is checkers.
Ooh,
That's a really great
they're-
way. You just
both
distilled
fun.
everything down.
But do you always let the Wookiee win? Is the question.
I mean,
Well,
either case, yes.
Rip your arms
but-
off.
Yeah. We did have a couple more questions. If
Yeah,
you
go
guys
for
wanted to
Sure.
jump
What we're here
back
for.
in. So Jake actually had a question that I've always wanted to know for a romance game. How do you know when a character interaction is like hot enough or like spicy enough? Like what
So yeah.
what is that process like?
Well, I'm giving a talk at PAX East on Friday night called Trust, Lust, and Ust, Writing Effective Romance in Games. And I go into my theory in that, but I can give you a sort of summary. But basically, every romance trope has varying levels of trust, lust, which is what's there, and ust, which is what is not there, unresolved sexual tension. So you take a trope like enemies to lovers, low trust, probably high lust. And then that's where the ust comes in, is like, I don't trust you, but I want you. I don't like you, but I want you. Like, there's that. And then you have something completely opposite, which is friends to lovers. That is high trust, possibly low lust. That's where the ust builds. So depends on the trope. Long story short, depends on the trope. But in Romancelvania, one of our real core aspects is player choice. And so there are points in the game where you can give a sweet response or a sexy response. And that is entirely up to you. Now, certain characters enjoy the sweet responses and certain characters sort of enjoy more sexy responses. And I think that that's sort of up to you to figure out what to kind of read the room, right? But you can also just befriend characters in the game. So you don't even have to go there with them. Like, one, if you're not attracted to somebody, you can eliminate them, or you can just talk to them about things. So there are 75 dates in the game. 75. I wrote a 500-page script just so that you could have any kind of conversation. Go to the bar and talk to somebody. You could take somebody to a seafood restaurant. You could just sit in their room and talk to them. Like, we want these options to be available because we understand that, like, the way people flirt is very different, and the way people interact with different types. Like, I'm gonna flirt with the bro dude incubus in a very different way than I'm gonna go flirt with the werewolf, right? Actually, I'm not even gonna flirt with the werewolf. We're just gonna talk about books and cheese because Fenton's my best friend. Manda's best friend.
It sounds like we would get along very well. So
Oh my
I
God.
might be talking with him as well.
Fenton. I mean, so the internet has some opinions on Fenton, and they are spicy. But for me, he's just my buddy that we talk about fancy things.
I thought that was me. That was your...
You've been replaced.
She wrote a script specifically to replace you. I'm sorry, Bill. But...
The fancy man wolf.
Yeah.
Actually, so on the opposite end of just the story driven romance stuff, Bill, as far as game design goes, you're building kind of a Castlevania-esque combat sort of situation. What was that process like, and did you pull from any specific games or genres that you both obviously have affinity for to create that system?
Yeah. So, I love the genre. I love Metroidvanias, but I wanted to be very careful with that because, we're trying to do something it's our own. I think I talked about the industry kind of pulling in a little bit, and despite there being a lot of like little tendrils that pop out and do something weird and wonderful, I think the Metroidvania genre can be a little bit limited. I see people taking it in different directions. I look at something like Dead Cells, and that's not really a Metroidvania, but there are sort of elements that feel a bit like that. And obviously, it's roguelike and a lot of, it's relatively linear and that kind of thing, so you don't have that sort of progression. And so it's an entirely different game, but there are elements that feel. So I really wanted to take the pieces that I love about Symphony of the Night, and then also question a lot of the things that maybe hold things back a little bit. And I'm not here to be like questioning Symphony because it's god tier, right? But so if I look at Symphony, the pieces that I love the sort of the notion of exploration leading to discovery and eventually mastery. The idea of, basically you're exploring this area and you're like, oh, I'm really challenged in this section here. The enemies are too tough. And, or maybe I come over here and I don't have the tools that I need to get through that, whether it's through a hard blockage of a physical gate or the enemies being too difficult. And then eventually you make your way around and circle around and power up a bunch, get the tools you need and progress. And that feeling of conquering the area is something that's very important to me. But I look very carefully at the one of the things that's always annoyed me is the fact that you're sitting there and like staring at the map. The fact that it's like, most of these games are really confusing and they're artificial and strange the way that they're connected, and that's because of the nature of the platform, right? And again, Symphony of the Night, love it. Hollow Knight, absolutely adore it, but they're so freaking easy to get lost in, and you play the map, and that's a real problem. So I looked. This is going to be mildly controversial, but I looked at games that I felt were doing the Metroidvania side of things right. And surprisingly, I think one of the unsung heroes not getting lost, despite the obtuse puzzles and the absurd problems that it has, like Castlevania 2, for me, if you ever played it, the way that has a sense of place and makes sense connectivity wise, it's not like, oh, I go to the magical plant land by jumping up in the magical rock land. All of a sudden I'm connected. It's like, how does that even make sense? There's one random door it doesn't make sense. And so therefore I don't have a mental mapping. I don't have a way to navigate that space. And so I thought very long and hard about, okay, we know that we want Dracula's Castle to be the kind of hub, right? We know that Dracula's Castle is going to be where all the cast members come, and you can go and take them to the gold room. Little Shining reference there. Take them to the gold room and take them for some drinks or whatever. And maybe Nefret's hanging out sort of on the balcony because she's like, likes the
Enjoying
big
the
expanse and the
moonlight.
exact sort of taking it all in. And Alessa's down in the dungeon, so you make your way down to the dungeon area. But eventually, like I have to go expand the cast, or I have to go solve one of these characters' quests. So you go out into Transylvania. So that the castle is more or less in the center of the entire experience, right? And then you come out of the castle and you enter the growing wood. It's this sprawling forest that effectively serves as another hub. To the one side of the map, you can make your way all the way down to the Real Booty Bay, and you can make your way on the left side all the way down to the Cold Heart Caverns. And different characters live in these different areas, and they branch out into others. So that you can kind of map these things together and say like, okay, well, off of the Real Booty Bay, I can go to the Grotto of Ennui, the sea city. Or I can go over to the Cold Heart Caverns and make my way out to like Frostbite Chasm. And so you were able to build these mental maps the same way I was when I was 10 years old playing, very crudely playing Castlevania 2. So it's not this weird, like that's always been the thing that really bothers me about these games. So I'm taking all the pieces that I love and not being beholden to the tropes that I think hold things back. And I wasn't trying to make realistic, worlds or whatever, but I want to make it so that like, hey, that makes sense. I know that Smash Mounds, where PSL lives with all the pumpkins, that's right off the growing wood, right? I know that I go through the forest and then I come out into the farmland where it has these sweeping hills of all these pumpkins.
Well, you make such a point about playing the map. I remember every time I play Symphony, I'm like going like this, like this, like this, like this, like this, and that's not helping me feel immersed in this castle, right? Like it's taking me out. Like we feel like that this is much more of an immersive experience than to be like checking this, checking that, checking this, checking that. Like we want it to be more natural.
Because to me, it's about that feeling of atmosphere, that feeling of immersion. Like I'm always walking around in my head those worlds. I'm walking around, the underground caverns in Hollow Knight, or just any given region in Symphony of the Night. And then the other piece here that I really wanted to try and experiment with is that, like, listen, there's a very much a movement right now towards difficult games, right? The get good side of things, and that's great. I love that exists. It's not for me. That's fine. I think if Castlevania would it's Symphony of the Night is not terribly difficult by any means, but and there's room for experimentation, but that piece right there doesn't really feel like it's explored a lot. I think that there's opportunity to let the player just like branch out into like, hey, I'm going to mess around with like a combination of rat darts and like the hammer, where I can pepper guys up, and then when they get close enough, when they're closing in, I can smash them with the hammer, that kind of thing. And so it's not by no means a game that has like infinite tools and all this crazy loot and that kind of stuff. There's a lot to find. We have the four main weapons, and then we have the tricks. We call them tricks, so you can throw things like rat darts and bonerang. Right, it's a boomerang that's shaped like a bone. I'm sure you get it. But so you have all these different tools to pepper enemies up, and then you have flare, these old magical powers you can do to summon like stakes. You like Dracball, like rip up stakes from the ground and impale enemies and that kind of thing. And then we also have these crystals, which allow you to put all kinds of elemental effects on whatever your attack is. And so there's all of these different ways to experiment. And it's not at all like an ImSim. It's not meant to be like an immersive simulation. But a lot of that is in my blood, having worked on the BioShock series and spending so much time working on that. I wanted it to really push, and I think you'll see this when you bring up like the item wheel. You can cycle through all of your tricks and treats and all of your weapons, and you can equip them into different slots, and then you can create all these different combos and that kind of thing. And it's really not meant to be about punishing the player with like crazy difficulty. It's about experimentation and fun. Because one thing I will say about this is that one of the other pillars is replayability. I look at the space of both dating sims and Metroidvanias, and we talked about, we play Symphony every year, religiously, and that's I feel a very rare case. I don't think most Metroidvanias are that replayable, but in our case, we've got the 12 cast
More
members.
nostalgia,
But we've got the 12 cast members, and you're voting them off, and you're going all these custom dates, and you're doing all this stuff, and you're upgrading all these different paths, and then you throw in the fact that you have male and femme drag. You can completely change the way you play the experience. It is an extremely replayable experience, and that really did the notion of experimentation really, I think, fits perfectly with that pillar of replayability.
Also,
you'll experiment with different tools.
I mean, just hearing you guys talk about it, it sounds like you took like the ability to pick and choose how you want to play romantically and added that same aspect to the combat, where it's like you're not forced to play one way, or you're not constantly seeking to be what's the easiest way I can kill these guys. You can have a little bit more fun and do a little bit more experimentation with it. But then also, just going back to what you were saying about sort of navigating the world, it just, from hearing you talk about it, Bill, it sounded like you were interested in putting in, maybe not specifically landmarks, but being able to visually read where you are more easily than referencing a map. And
100%.
I think that is only going to improve, the how deep the player gets into a session, and how more realized the world is. But
landmarking is always a huge pillar in any game to help navigation, and so we lean very heavily into that. The number of themed areas, I don't know what the total count is here, but I mean, this is a big game. I mean, it's not like AAA, like, I'm going to play this game for 40 hours or whatever. I think most people, you're looking at around 12-ish hours, and then extremely replayable. So I think you take the two genres we're talking about, take Metroidvanias, with the exception of Hollow Knight, I think blowing out the scale at like was like most people's like 20, 25 hours,
crazy,
which is crazy. I think the replayability that we have really stand us apart, and then you add in all the narrative bits and just the world. I think it's just, again, really trying to emphasize what we love and what we feel is missing from the two genres. I think there's on the story side, we're really trying to respect the player's time as much as possible, while giving them a ridiculous amount of content, so many conversations and dates and just quirky things to explore and just a whole world to live in. and just taking each of those elements, and again, like I said, picking and choosing what we like, and really emphasizing the things that I think the genre could use to bolster in a different direction.
Well, we made the game we want to play.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we
Yeah.
we actually had a question Halucha put in the chat. They hadn't heard of the game before, but they asked, are gay romances possible? And obviously, I think the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
I'm very happy to hear that because I'm always for that myself. Can you just talk a little bit about the process of adding those in
It's
and
not
coming up
even
with them?
it's not even adding.
Yeah,
You can
they're
choose
there.
whichever drac you want to play, and you can date whoever you want to date, and you can friend whoever you want to befriend. One of the things that has pissed me off the most in games I love, and I love BioWare games, but god damn it, let me romance who I want to romance. Like I
I want
wanted
to romance Garrus as a
Samara.
guy.
I don't know. I did. So I did. Like I hit that hard every time. I wanted to date Samara, I believe. I wanted to date Morrigan. I wanted to date whoever I wanted to date, and I couldn't. Persona 5, which is a freaking masterpiece, and like it brings me to tears. I love it so much. But damn it, I wanted to date the boys. Like, come on. It was unfair that you could only date the girls. And you know, I just feel like when we made Romancelvania, I want every option available to everybody. And essentially the canon is just assume everybody's pan, right? Like you can just date whoever you want to date. They'd be interested or they don't have to be interested. Like do what you want.
Yeah, we tried to, in terms of fantasy fulfillment, in every respect, it's just about player choice.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard any complaints in terms of we know you can date anyone from any or whoever, however you play. So again, just trying to hit on everything we can from that perspective, just meaningful choice, and player choice, and making good on saying yes to the player.
For sure.
Fantastic. I'm so excited.
I
At
know.
first,
I'm
I was excited. I was like, oh, I should replay Symphony of the Night. And then I'm like, no, this comes out in like 5 days. I'll just play that. And I was like, but I was also thinking this could be someone's game they play every year. Like you guys playing Symphony of the Night, which is even better because it's even more replayable. So you can get a different outcome.
Yeah, I'm really like, because we put so much into that, and like it always came back to those being, but again, everything feeding into just being a fully rich and realized world that is replayable and worth going back to. There's just so many Easter eggs and so many things to discover and different ways to play and
the
different
final
characters to meet,
dates.
and like I mean we effectively, I mean 12 characters. I'm sure you can imagine the amount of complexity of the story, but then also all the different separate quests that we have. We have it. Not every character is. Some of the characters are relatively easier to win over,
as in real life.
Yeah, but some of the characters are like gonna take a lot of work to win over, and like Medusa's an interesting case. Like her quest is you have to find her body, right? She's as we know, Perseus lopped off her head several thousand years ago. And so you meet her as a sort of, she's her head's on a statue.
I like to think of it as Perseus lopped off her.
There you go. There you go. And so the quest for that, the way that pays off is just like, when people see that, they're gonna like, what are you thinking? Why did you like? First of all, the fact that there's X% of people who are going to see that, and the amount of the sort of extra effort it takes to put that in. But then when you see it and you're like, what were you thinking? It's like, it involves, I mean, I'm not gonna spoil it, right?
Escape.
Yeah, Draco's, I will say that Draco's skateboards. Yeah. And it's this whole sequence that's it's inspired by Donkey Kong Country, actually.
Oh, wow.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
A little bit of
yeah, exactly. Not everyone's gonna get it. Not everyone played Donkey Kong Country, and that's fine. There's a sequence where Drac is tricking off of everything on a skateboard, and if you don't get that, that's fine. I think it's on its face. It's like, that's what is going on here. Why is?
But they've already played the game so far.
Yeah, so they're already
like,
I'm
not surprised by this at all. Like, this is totally par for course.
Yeah. So there's gonna be a lot of. So we want to keep people on their toes, and just just not knowing what's gonna come next. It's
exciting.
Yes. No, seriously. You've at least made one sale tonight because Halucha says they're sold. They're gonna get the game for their deck live and legally. So
Oh,
good
thank
job,
you.
guys. Good
Thank
job.
you.
Very exciting.
Yes.
Kyle, do you want to hit any final questions you want to rapid fire through here?
Yeah, let me actually if you've got one, Will, you can go for it. I need to scroll through. There's so many. We
I was
came
just
up
gonna
with so
ask,
many.
how do vampires get an erection if they don't have a heartbeat?
Holy shit.
It was a big
They
one.
drink blood. The blood goes somewhere.
The heartbeat. I like to think that it's
Oh.
just really focusing.
Yeah, well,
I figured
I
vampires
literally
die
said
hard.
I said it's like Dennis Reynolds. You know, he can go from flaccid to erect just
Like that.
on a whim. On a whim.
Oh man, I love it.
The implication.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, is there a boat date? Is there an implication boat date?
We don't go.
Oh,
That's
dang
too
it.
dark. That goes
See,
too
Yeah,
does
dark.
that is too
Drac,
dark.
Drac have any Dick Towel money or whatever?
The golden god.
Yeah. I don't know if you have any Always Sunny references in there, but I'm hoping that there
Well,
are
hold on
maybe
second.
one.
Hold on.
Pan it on the
No,
camera.
because so Lindsay, our producer, she is obsessed with. I love. We all love the show, but she loves the show and she quotes it all. Like one of the things she constantly quoted, like, "Oh, Pepper Jack love." Like, what was it? Fraggle Rock, Pepper Jack love.
Oh, Pepper Jack.
I actually just showed my oldest son the water park episode.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. Like, there's so many freaking references to the game. I don't know for sure. I gotta think because I gotta run through in my head.
There's definitely. I think you should leave.
There's tons of that. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
Mm.
God. What a
If not, then shame on us because we adore the show.
I mean, it's good to
That and Arrested
know.
Development are kind of like
Yeah.
the seminal works.
Yeah, no. So there's a lot of inspiration. I think again, pun master here. We all love puns, but I mean, there's so many freaking puns in this game, and a lot of that directly is lifted from or inspired by Arrested Development. There's a lot of.
Mhm.
Blah
but-
blah blahs blah blah.
So I think I think
Lucille.
The loose seal.
in spirit, there's probably a lot of Always Sunny, but I got to go back and check. Jeez, it's been such a.
I mean, even just knowing that you guys are fans, like I feel like fans of that show find ways to just implement
Yeah,
ideas and maybe subtle references or subconscious references. So I'm sure we'll feel the Always Sunny bits when
Well,
they
it's
come out.
amazing how I love those long running comedies, even though Arrested Development wasn't that long running. They really did develop their whole universe,
Yeah.
and like there's just their own language and their own stuff that it makes it difficult to jump in. But
Mm.
there's just like it builds upon itself, and it's not most TV comedy is episodic, right? Where it's like it's like completely standalone, and it's like the universe before didn't exist. Occasionally there are throwbacks, but they keep Arrested Development and Always Sunny are always building and building.
Well,
and
the fact
building.
alone that the introduction of Nightman
Yes.
song
Yep.
is a season and a half until you get the musical.
Right.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so I love that. Again, I'm big fans of world building, and so certainly from a comedic perspective, we're trying to incorporate as much of that as we can.
For sure. That's only going to be a good thing. It's only going to make the world that much deeper and immersive. There's only two more questions I see that we haven't really asked. Of course, I just lost it. Oh, Jake asked, were there any characters that you wanted to include but couldn't? I know you guys talked about having the freedom to just add whatever you want, but were there any characters where you're like, I don't know if we can make this work, even if we could figure it out? But,
You know, there are a couple of characters that hit the cutting room floor,
mm,
and they just weren't ready for TV, as they say. Like they were close. I like them a lot. They're still sort of in my consciousness.
But I do think the main reason the ones that were cut were because they were filling a niche that other characters were. Like
Yeah.
as you get through development and you realize you start to build up the characters and you write more and more. And there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of story in these characters. You start to identify these patterns and like, okay, what trope are they filling in? What sort of narrative purpose do they have? And in at least a few of the characters' cases, it wasn't working. But early on, like we're talking with just when the sky was the limit and kind of things were there, like there were some even like super absurd characters, which we
Very wacky.
I think the dream is things go well and we continue to either through updates or sequel or whatever. Like I don't have a sense for exactly the layout of how things go. I think a lot of it depends on how things go. I know, right? But it would be an absolute dream to continue to because
Oh,
we
I got some characters in
yeah
the bank right here.
yeah we
Yeah.
also have several frameworks for where to take our existing characters because any
Oh,
one
nice.
of them I think is I think deep enough to
Absolutely.
have their own sort of offshoot. So we're loving it, and again, would do give just about anything to continue to build on this. And I think these characters that it's funny because over time we've kind of established their own voices, their own niches. So it's a good chance you'll see them.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds great, and I like the fact that you guys are already planning forward because just personally, I think that this is going to be a pretty big hit, and
Oh,
I know I'm very excited for it. Will, you said you're excited for it.
For sure.
I've got some friends I've convinced to look at the trailer, and that was pretty much all it took for them to
Nice.
oh,
get
thank
interested. So
Yeah, we're definitely counting on word of mouth. Put
yeah,
everything we can into this. And so I've never been more confident. I talked a little bit about Bioshock. We had at Irrational we were this critical darling company that never had a real hit, and we had all the signs of that repeating. Much bigger game, much like I think just much more accessible and gettable and awesome game. Like the Bioshock was phenomenal, obviously. But up until about 2 weeks before launch or so, when we released that Xbox Live demo, we had no idea how it was going to go down. Like you get all this coverage, but we're like, we've been there before. Critical Darling, is it going to happen again? This is getting weird, right? Won all these awards at at E3 and this kind of thing, and then we released the demo on Xbox Live, and it was sort of like at that point the project was mostly done. We're just waiting for certification, and we started to get calls from people, friends, and people who were home for the day because it's like just trying to recovering. And we're like, "Hey, can you download the demo?" And we're like, "No,
it's
no."
not working.
No, and like from what we understood, the inside word from Microsoft that's still early Xbox Live relatively, they're like, "No, Xbox Live is down. You had so many freaking downloads for your game." Like it was like everyone knew it was coming out. It was like, okay, we're gonna be okay. And it's the same kind of feeling here where we believe in this thing. A lot of that same sort of feeling. But it's like, is it gonna get in front of enough eyes? Super confident in it. And then we released that demo at Steam Next Fest, and like, there a few we had a few people who were like, this is the few press say this is the best demo we've ever seen at a Steam Next Fest. And we're like, oh shit. That's the
so good.
so, yeah, it's an exciting time, but we definitely are counting on it's a different time. Marketing
Yeah.
is not what it used to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yes.
Kyle, you're clear. Is that all questions? Are we wrapped up, or do you have any more?
There's just one more, and you
Just
guys
one
sort of
more.
already talked about it. What are you most proud of about this game? What are you excited for people to experience? And if you want to thank anyone on your team, you talked a little bit about it sounds like an amazing team you guys have behind you. Go for it.
I just can't believe we pulled this thing off. Like this is like in terms of hitting outside of your weight class. Again, I mentioned Bioshock before, but like that was a scrappy team, and to win all the awards and to get all the attention we had, that was it was like 50, 60 people. And, we got a lot of support from Pub and this kind of thing, but we're going up against like Assassin's Creed and Modern Warfare 1 and all these games that were like hundreds of people working on. And again, scale here is quite a bit smaller than Bioshock, but what we pulled off to build a Metroidvania that's about 12 hours, that is as replayable as rich a world as it is, to have all the 12 voice datable characters is obscene. um for a team our size, when it comes down to it, it's me,
This is where we make it. I mean, this is where the
my
magic is right
sister,
here.
Brendan up in New Hampshire. And we've had a lot of the people come like as like people we worked with in the past and some fresh new talent. Just like kind of like when they have time, like
Yeah.
yeah, and so I just cannot wait people to see what we were able to pull off. And but again, I think the way it all comes together into this quirky package like you've never seen before, it is really trying to the same but different, like you said. We're doing something that's you're taking a lot of risks, really putting ourselves out there. And I just can't wait to see what hits because there's so much there. You know, what pieces resonate. You know, we didn't expect Fenton to be like people
Oh
were like, oh my
yeah.
god, more Fenton. And you know, again, PSL, we're like, if people are gonna understand PSL, it's
Oh
so quirky.
man, it was like a fever dream coming up with her. So I think I'm gonna go with her is what I'm most proud of. Is like I'm a basic bitch in the fall. Okay, like I go out, I get my little pumpkin spice latte with my little scarf, my little boots, and so I came home one day and I'm just sipping my PSL and I'm going, let's make a little witch make out of pumpkins. And I'm just like, yeah. And then I'm like, wait, she's a scarecrow. So she's like up on this pole. Maybe she's into bondage. Maybe she's a kinky little pumpkin witch. And I'm just sitting there sipping my drink. And they're all like, you want crack? And I was like, concept it. It's in the game. And then once we saw the concept, we were like, oh shit, she's amazing.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it for us, I think the sort of not knowing what to expect is mirrored by I think what the player, and I think that's going to be a real fun journey.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch people play this. Like, I really can't. Like, I will be in streams being like, hee hee.
Well, I
Yeah,
think,
I think
we're planning on streaming it, right? Will or
yeah,
at some point? Yeah.
the 7th is a Tuesday, so yes,
Okay.
1000%. We'll be streaming
Exciting.
9 p.m.
Oh.
Eastern. I don't know. I honestly think all of us kickstarted it, so I think any one of
Yeah,
us
I'm
Thank
stream it.
getting. I think I got the Steam, and then I paid extra for the Switch version because it seems like a game that suits the Switch. I also have Perception on my Switch, so I'm like, I'm just gonna get all the deep end games on my Switch at some
Aw.
point.
You're the best. Thank you. Yeah, again, we're so grateful to have the support that we've had, and yeah, I hope this is a good way to thank everyone. The
Yeah,
sort of quality we had.
The backers get a big, huge thanks for believing in it from early on. And our publisher, we love 2124. They're amazing. But just everybody who's looked at this and been like, this is made just for me. You have no idea how many people have been like, this is the kind of weird that speaks to my soul. And I'm like, me too. That's
Yeah.
why we made it, you know?
Not to belabor the point, but every time I see like comments on your videos, I see those types of comments, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, this is what I've been wanting for a really long time, and
Right,
that's just like
right.
heartwarming. But
Yeah. It's such a great feeling.
Well, you know, we go to shows or go to PAX and whatnot. We're talking to our peeps, you know, and we kind of like we know what we like, and we kind of vibe with a lot of people, and we're like you kind of have to trust yourself, you know, like when we talk about stuff, we talk to people, to other gamers. When I was working at Electronics Boutique or Funcoland or whatever, do I have any alums here? You guys work? I can't. Kyle, were you EB alum or GameStop?
no, I tried. I applied to a GameStop, but way back in like mid 2000s, and
You didn't make it.
never worked.
Oh, I
No.
will hire you in a second. But yeah, just like again, you talk to people and talk to what people want to experience. You have to build up that confidence and trust yourself. Be like, you know what? They'd like this. People would like this weird thing. It's not the same. It's not. You've never seen it before, but I feel like I know what people want enough. Like
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I cannot wait to play it. Folks at home and listening on the podcast, Romancelvania officially comes out on the 7th as well.
Yep.
And God, I lost my train of thought. The Deep End Games, Bill and Amanda, thank you so much for being
thank you.
here
Thank you,
this week. God, I'm just so excited to play it. I've marked the calendar. Officially marked the calendar. So you made the calendar.
Take the day. It's
Take the day. Yeah, let me submit my PTO right now.
No.
No, I'm just gonna play. I'm gonna play during work because I still want to get paid. But I'm not gonna.
Honestly, I'm trying to figure out how I can spin it for work, so I can just play it for work and record it. So that'll work out.
It's enriching.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm so happy for you guys. I'm so happy this is coming out. It's gonna be a blast. Thank you everyone for watching. It is fun to do this podcast. Kyle, thank you for being here. I'm excited you were here as well. And thank you for getting these very special guests on here. Folks, that's our show. I'm going to hit the outro button here, which is going to play some music, and then I'm probably not going to time the ending perfectly with the music because I mess it up every single time. But let's see if it works. Folks, you can find our content subpixelfilms.com. We'll bring you to our fancy link tree where you can go to all of the places we are, like Twitter and Twitch and YouTube and Redbubble, where our merch is if you want to buy any cool merch with our logo on it. This is Local Chat. I was your host, Will Crosby. Joining me this week was Kyle Bailey, as well as Amanda and Bill from the Deep End Games. We will be back this weekend with some Subpixel Aerospace. I'm not quite sure when we're streaming that. Probably Saturday night, 9 p.m. Kerbal Space Program 1, because the second one is broken right now. And then we'll be back Tuesday doing something, and then Thursday with Local Chat. Once again, thank you guys for being on the show this week. Thank you everyone out there for listening. That's about it. Look, I timed it so perfectly. We'll see you all then. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.